The following scenario is hypothetical and presented for educational and entertainment purposes. It's a normal Tuesday. Not history book Tuesday, just regular Tuesday. Your alarm betrayed you, your coffee tastes like it's holding a grudge, and the internet is already arguing about something that absolutely does not matter. You're halfway through convincing yourself you're a functional adult when your phone buzzes with a notification that feels off. Unusual seismic activity detected. Authorities monitoring closely. You blink. You refresh. You tell yourself it's probably nothing. And then your brain, because your brain is a drama queen, whispers, what if it's a supervolcano? Now, the word supervolcano does something special to the human nervous system. It doesn't feel like weather event. It feels like the earth clearing its throat and saying, hey, remember me? It's the kind of word that makes people open 5 tabs, watch 3 panicked videos, and suddenly become a geology expert who can't pronounce half the terms they're reading. But let's ground this in reality, because Hollywood has been very rude to volcano science. A supervolcano isn't a mountain that suddenly turns into a flaming fountain. It's more like a massive underground magma system, an entire region's worth of hot, pressurized potential, capable of erupting on a scale that changes maps and rewrites normal. The famous ones are tied to huge calderas, giant depressions formed when the ground collapses after enormous eruptions. The kind of scar the planet keeps for a very long time. And before we go further, quick reality check. A super eruption this decade is not something you should be losing sleep over. It's incredibly unlikely. Monitoring is better than it's ever been, and most volcanic unrest never turns into the doomsday scenario people love to meme about. So this isn't a panic video. This is a story, a thought experiment. Because even if the odds are low, the consequences are so big that understanding them makes us smarter. And weirdly grateful for boring days. So in our story, the first warning doesn't arrive with fire. It arrives with data. Scientists notice earthquake swarms, small quakes, clustered, repeating like the crust is tapping a nervous foot. Satellites detect the ground lifting in subtle ways that no human eyeball could ever catch, like the land is inhaling. Gas readings shift, hydrothermal features change. The system isn't erupting yet, it's simply restless. And the internet, as always, treats restless like we're all gonna die by Thursday. At first, it's mostly background noise in the news cycle. A short segment between a celebrity breakup and a story about a dog that can skateboard. Experts speak calmly. They use words like probability and uncertainty. The anchors nod solemnly while clearly wishing the experts would just say, yes, it will explode at 3 p.m. But science doesn't do dramatic release dates. Then the pattern changes. The earthquakes get shallower. The uplift accelerates. The graphs look less like gentle waves and more like a heartbeat after running up stairs. You start hearing phrases like increased alert level. The authorities begin staging resources. Officials don't sound panicked, but they start saying things like, we encourage residents to review evacuation routes, which is government language for, please don't wait until the sky turns into powdered rock. People react in the most human ways possible. Some folks laugh it off. Some folks stockpile enough supplies to survive a decade on Mars. Somebody tries to sell anti-volcano wellness crystals online. And somewhere, a person with exactly 1 semester of high school earth science becomes the loudest voice in your family group chat. Your uncle posts a blurry screenshot of a seismogram, like he personally installed the sensors with a wrench and a dream. In the middle of all this, life still happens. Kids still go to school, people still go to work, bills still show up on schedule because bills are undefeated. And that's what makes the whole thing surreal. The world stays ordinary right up until it doesn't. You're living between two realities, the one where this is just another news story, and the one where the planet is quietly loading a very serious update. Then comes the week where everything tightens. The ground deformation crosses thresholds that make the scientists stop hedging and start using firmer language. Not certainty, never certainty, but a tone that says, this is no longer a theoretical exercise. Emergency management shifts from planning to action. Restricted zones widen. Evacuation orders begin in the highest risk areas, and you feel it in the air, not literally yet, just socially, like a collective inhale. The last calm night is the strangest part. The sun sets like it always does, Restaurants are still open in places far away. Someone is still posting vacation photos. Somewhere, a couple is arguing about what to watch on Netflix because, even in the shadow of potential catastrophe, humans will absolutely debate a show they won't finish. Normality becomes a thin blanket, comforting, familiar, and fragile. The eruption begins without asking permission, not with a neat explosion like a movie, but with a rupture, pressure releasing through the crust, escalating in minutes from unrest to event. The first images that hit the news aren't lava rivers. They're towering columns, an eruption plume punching upward, rising fast, climbing into the upper atmosphere like the Earth is trying to send a message to space. Close to the source, it's catastrophic. There are hazards that don't move slowly, hazards that don't give you time to grab one more thing. But most of the world experiences the eruption differently, because super eruptions don't just devastate locally, they distribute consequences. The story expands outward, not as fire, but as ash. Volcanic ash isn't soft. It's tiny, sharp fragments of rock and glass. It gets into everything. It scratches, irritates, clogs, and wears down machines like sandpaper with ambition. When the first ash advisories go out, it feels almost ridiculous. Ashfall, like something out of a fantasy novel. And then you see the sky dim. You smell it. You watch cars drive through a haze that looks like weather but behaves like a problem. The first modern system to throw up its hands is aviation. Flights don't delay, they vanish. Airspace closures expand because ash and jet engines are a terrible combination. Passenger travel freezes. Cargo slows. That invisible web of global movement, the one that makes your world feel small, suddenly snaps tight, and you realize how many things you assumed would always be available. A strange new economy forms overnight. The economy of filters, masks, sealed windows, and whatever keeps fine particles out of your lungs and your machines. Stores sell out of basics. Online shopping becomes a comedy sketch where everything says delivery estimate someday. People discover that their home is full of tiny air pathways they never noticed until the air itself became unfriendly. In some regions, ash falls lightly, just a dusting that makes everything look like it's been powdered. In others, it accumulates fast, heavy enough to stress rooftops, especially when it gets wet and turns into a gray paste with the mood of concrete. Cities issue guidance. Some people follow it. Some people decide they're invincible. Nature does not negotiate with confidence. Utilities struggle in ways most people have never thought about. Water systems don't like abrasive particles. Power infrastructure doesn't love conductive sludge. Maintenance crews work around the clock. And suddenly you feel how physical modern life really is. How electricity isn't magic. How clean water isn't automatic. How everything you rely on is a chain of real objects maintained by real people who are now working in an environment that fights them. The news cycle shifts. At first, it was spectacle. Videos of the plume, dramatic satellite images, endless replays. Then it becomes practical. School closures, health advisories, transportation restrictions, emergency aid. And then it becomes something heavier. Markets jittering, insurers sweating, governments negotiating. The world doesn't end. It just becomes harder to operate, like civilization is running on a strained engine with a dashboard full of warning lights. The ash isn't the only thing in the sky. The eruption injects gases high into the atmosphere, and over time those gases can form particles that reflect sunlight. The light changes subtly. The sunsets get oddly vivid, beautiful in a way that feels inappropriate, and gradually the temperature patterns shift. It's not instant ice age. It's a slow, unsettling drift where seasons don't behave the way your childhood taught you they should. This is where the consequences start to show up on dinner plates. Agriculture doesn't need apocalypse to fail. It just needs enough disruption to miss its margins. A little less sunlight, a little cooler, a shorter growing season, a mistimed frost, a delayed shipment of fertilizer, a fuel shortage, a bottleneck at ports because global transport is tangled. The world's food system is efficient, yes, but efficiency often means less slack, and slack is what you want when the sky is improvising. Prices rise, first in whispers and then in headlines. Some countries tighten exports to protect domestic supply. Others scramble to secure imports. The global map begins to look less like a marketplace and more like a chessboard. You see the human side quickly. Food banks overwhelmed, relief organizations stretched, communities leaning on each other, and also Inevitably, people trying to profit from fear. Meanwhile, daily life develops a strange rhythm. People learn how to clean ash safely. They learn which masks actually work and which ones are just fashion with optimism. They learn that HVAC filters have become a precious resource. In some places, kids grow up with ash days the way other kids grow up with snow days. The word normal changes shape. Technology mostly survives, but not untouched. The internet doesn't evaporate, but it depends on power stability, maintenance, shipping parts, and functioning economies. Repairs take longer when planes aren't moving freely and supply chains are strained. Outages become more frequent in affected regions. And quietly, a new appreciation grows for the invisible labor behind everything that feels always on. Then comes the psychological pivot. The moment people realize this isn't a 2-week disruption. It's a season, maybe multiple seasons. The early adrenaline fades, replaced by fatigue. The crisis becomes routine, and routine crises are the hardest kind. This is where leadership matters, communication matters, trust matters. Because the physical hazard is only one half of the story. The other half is how society coordinates when the timeline is unclear. In our story, the places that do best aren't necessarily the richest. They're the ones that can adapt quickly, communicate clearly, and cooperate. They're the ones with redundancy, backup power, diversified food sources, stockpiles of critical parts, flexible logistics. They're the ones that treat preparedness as a boring civic habit instead of a personality trait. On a personal level, people learn what prepared actually means. Not cinematic preparedness, not bunker fantasies, the real kind. Knowing how to store clean water, having a little food buffer, keeping medications managed, understanding local advisories, taking care of neighbors who need help. The kind of preparedness that looks uninteresting on camera but saves lives in real life. Months pass. The atmosphere slowly begins to clear. The climate starts to stabilize toward familiar patterns, though familiar now carries a footnote. Industries adjust, new routes form, governments revise plans in real time, communities build new rituals, and the human brain does what it always does. It adapts, sometimes beautifully, sometimes messily, often both at once. And eventually one day you wake up and the sky looks normal again. Not perfect, not untouched, but normal. The light feels cleaner, breathing feels easier, flights resume more regularly, food supply steadies, the crisis loosens its grip, you don't get a neat ending, you get a slow return, and you realize something almost embarrassing. You had forgotten what it felt like to trust the air. So what's the point of telling this story if the odds are low? It's not to scare you. It's to remind you that the modern world is both powerful and delicate, and that resilience is not paranoia. Resilience is wisdom. The supervolcano scenario is extreme, yes, but it shines a flashlight on something true even in ordinary times. Systems matter. Preparation matters. Cooperation matters. And the people who keep society running are more important than we ever say out loud. And if nothing else, it should make you grateful for a boring Tuesday. The kind where the most dramatic thing in your life is your coffee maker acting suspicious.